Alright, we're back for the final video in this installation process. You can see that we have our new mid-frame here. We're changing it from the silver to the black, and this is the new black one that we have. I'm going to go ahead and remove all of the blue adhesive portions off of this that's covering everything in here. We have another adhesive portion just right here for the SIM tray. You see we have that. We move from our other housing. We're going to go ahead and remove the blue covering for the adhesive. If we can get it out, it's been a little bit tricky here. You need to make sure the ribbon cable goes out and through the tray opening, so it folds down and around. So we're going to go ahead and slide that in and then press it down. Make sure it gets into the adhesive below. You should have the ribbon cable sticking out just a little bit, like so. Alright, we're looking pretty good. Our next step is for the LCD. So we're going to go ahead and slide the cables on through to the mid-frame here. Now, the blue tape that I just removed was covering the adhesive. This already has adhesive installed on it. I'm going to go ahead and push this in and set it down into the mid-frame of the phone. We want to move our fingers all the way down in all the corners, make sure it's sitting nice and flush. Go ahead and flip it over and just kind of press in the corners to make sure everything is sitting inside and lined up properly in the mid-frame. Take your time and make sure that there's no gaps or creases in this. Want to make sure that you put all this time into fixing this phone that it does look 100%. We're going to go ahead and reinstall our battery in here. I put just some double-sided adhesive on here. You don't have to do this, but I did because I wanted to stick back in the way it was. And this mid-frame does not have any adhesive to hold the battery in place. So the ribbon cable needs to face towards the bottom of the phone. You can't really mess this up. It has guides where it has to fit into. So just go ahead and push it back into the right spot within the mid-frame. Make sure it's stuck in there nice and well. We don't want it to be flopping around against the logic board. Perfect. Just going to double check and see what we need to remove here. We have this blue adhesive holder here. We're going to go ahead and remove. Well, portion within the camera, go ahead and pull that outside. And this portion for the power button. Kind of flopped over and came off, so I'm just going to push it back down with my dental pick here and make sure it's nice and flat. Go ahead and pull the adhesive covering off for the volume button as well. We have the majority of everything removed from this phone. to make sure that volume adhesive was stuck down nice and right. Make sure our buttons work properly. You definitely don't want to have any issues with that. We'll go ahead and put our earpiece speaker back in. Make sure it slides in properly. It's a nice tight fit. Make sure it sits nice and flush within the earpiece speaker mount. It's a little tiny pad that I actually missed taking out of the old mid-frame. Needs to go back into the new one since this one did not come with it. If yours comes with it, don't worry about taking it out. This is the one that's supplied with your new phone. We have our power button. Go ahead and stick this onto the top of the phone. It's a little bit tricky. You'll have to use a pry tool or pick of something to kind of stick the bottom portion of it on. We'll go ahead and put the top portion of the logic board back in. Now as you do this, you want to make sure that the camera sits flush, the vibration mounts and motor go back into place. The flat side sits top side. There's a little clip up in the upper corner here. You want to make sure that sits in. You can connect your power button ribbon cable. Making sure I snap the little cover over the earpiece speaker here. Go ahead and push down our volume button onto the adhesive on the side of the mid-frame. Making sure that clips in there. And it's nice and snug. I clipped this, I want to make sure it's fitting all the way, so we're just going to pull it back a little bit and push down on the board to make sure it clips in place. We're going to go ahead and put our screws back in. Make sure you use the exact same ones you took out for the reassembly. One in the upper right hand corner. One in the bottom side of this board in the left hand corner. And then a third, the very bottom right hand side of the board. Now I did attach this ribbon cable when we were testing the LCD display. You can go ahead and just remove it again. We'll go ahead and wait until we get a little bit further into the assembly. Actually, I'll just pop it off real quick. What we're going to do next is go ahead and push the SIM slots into the cable connector, making sure that the back of it is flipped up so we can push the cable into the connector. We'll go ahead and snap it down. We'll reconnect the ribbon cable. Little piece of adhesive down here at the bottom for this bottom speaker port. Now here's a little piece I was showing you in the last video. You want to make sure you put it back on before you put the bottom portion assembly on. It only fits in one direction, so you can't really put it in incorrectly. It'll sit snugly into the position where it's supposed to fit. It's kind of like just a little spacer. Here's our bottom assembly. Go ahead and put this into place. There are 3 screws down here in the bottom portion of this as well. The first screw in the upper left-hand corner of this new board we just put in. Just going to make sure it's fitting nice and snug with that spacer below it. Before we put any of the other screws in, we're going to actually put our main board in. Pulling up all the connectors. You have to slide the main board in to a little space below in the piece we just put in. There'll be a screw slot. You need to make sure it lines up correctly down here at the bottom. It's a little bit tricky because there's so many ribbon cables on the interior of this phone. I'm going to line it up just like so. Making sure all of the wire connectors are sitting on top of the board. Black connector we're going to pull out from underneath. Make sure I'm using the correct screw. Input the screw into the top portion of this main board. Put in the upper left-hand corner. A screw in the lower right-hand corner. Now these don't have to be extremely snug, you just want to make sure that they fit properly. This little bracket actually is something that I was confused about. I was missing off of the bottom portion here. So it slides underneath the black speaker portion. I'm just going to unscrew this screw so we can get a little leeway here. It may have popped off if you were disassembling yours as well. Slide it in between the two, and then it'll slide on top of the main board here. So I didn't put my remaining 2 screws in the bottom. So we'll put one where we just slid this little metal piece into, and then one in between the 2 screws we've already put in. Screw down the remaining one. We kind of untwist it so we can put the black or the little metal portion in. Then our last screw for the main board, going through the metal portion we put in and then through the main board as well. Alright, now really all we have left is just connect everything back together to make sure it's fitting properly. Go ahead and put our snap-on connector here. This can be a little bit tricky because the connector is very flat and slim. You want to make sure you get it on there snug before you start screwing things together. It will stay on the board. You won't necessarily hear it clip in like you would most other push connectors, but it will not pop back off or slide around. So make sure you get that snugness before you start screwing this into the main board. Alright, both screws are in. We'll go ahead and just push down the tape. It may not stick extremely well. That's okay. Just use your fingernails to kind of rub it in a little bit. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't stay. Putting in our battery cable down here at the very bottom. It is also a snap connector with 2 screws. This one seems like it snaps a little bit better. You'll kind of hear it or feel it depress onto the section. I'm just going to flatten out this copper here as well. Go ahead and put in both screws. Alright, the next is the LCD connector. We'll go ahead and put it into its cable slot and then push down the connector. Make sure it's nice and snug in the slot before you start connecting it. Put in the cable to the bottom speaker port we just put in. It's not playing extremely fair with me here. Doesn't want to bend a little bit. Got a little piece of tape on it as well. So I'm going to slide it into its connector. Make sure that it fits nice and snug. You'll see kind of some T-stops on it. You want to make sure those get in as far as possible. And we'll flip down the connector once we get it in there. Perfect. It's a little bit of black tape that was left on top of the cable, which I just connected. We'll go ahead and put the digitizer cable in. I'm going to flip this connector back up. Then we can go ahead and snap it down as well once we get the cable in there. Perfect. There's an additional cable here from the top logic board to the main board. This will be our last ribbon cable connector I believe we have to put in. Making sure it's nice and in there before we flip that connector down. We'll go ahead and put the tape back over. The tape does flip onto the bottom connector for the digitizer as well, so make sure it reconnects. We have a little piece of black tape here as well. We have our black wire connector. We'll go ahead and put into the connection port down here at the bottom of the phone. Sometimes these wire connectors can be a little bit tricky, Don't use excessive force. They'll snap into place when they're fitting just right. You can bend them a little bit if you do need a little bit of ease to get them onto the correct spot. These longer ones are the tricky ones because they're almost they feel like they're almost too small to fit back into where you got them off from. May take me a second to get this connected here. Alright, there we go. Go ahead and put our two connectors on. Our third little tiny wire connector here. Alright, we're looking pretty good with this phone. LCD screen still nice and on there. We're going to go ahead and just power the phone on by pressing the power button. The trick is getting the back off of this phone is such a pain in the butt that you want to go ahead and test everything. Test your Bluetooth, test your Wi-Fi, test your GPS. Make sure everything is functioning correctly with this phone before you put the back cover on. Now, unfortunately, I lost my video of me putting the back cover on. My hard drive died. I had a Mushkin solid-state drive, which crapped out on me. I'm on my third one. So this isn't necessarily a review video. I'm just saying don't buy a Mushkin 480 gig Kronos Deluxe solid-state drive. They're crap out. They're pieces of junk. Bought myself a Samsung one, much better now. The screen's going ahead and turning on. You'll see me test a couple of things. The back is not very hard to put on. Just make sure you start at the very top. I like to put the back flat on a surface with the opening facing upwards, sliding the phone top portion in, so power button in first, and then pushing it and snapping it down into place. That is the best way for me to do it. If I find a video of me doing it, I'll go ahead and upload it as a separate video to this. But hopefully you liked this video. Hopefully you found this series successful and helpful. As always, I appreciate you watching. Hit the like button. Hit the comments if you have anything I can work on. As always, thank you.